Mid-1943, Calcutta's streets under a sweltering sun. Emaciated figures collapse against walls, their eyes hollow, as passers-by step around bodies that have become as common as the dust. Imagine this. In a province famed for its lush rice paddies and teeming markets, where harvests once fed millions, a silent catastrophe unfolded that claimed lives on a scale rivaling battlefields. Yet no guns fired, no bombs fell directly on the starving. Did you know that during 1943, in the Bengal region of British India, an estimated 2.1 million people, or possibly up to 3 million, died from starvation, malaria, and diseases fueled by malnutrition, while food stocks existed but remained out of reach for the poorest? Picture the scenes in villages and along roads to Calcutta. Families reduced to skeletons, children with distended bellies begging for scraps, mothers too weak to nurse infants who faded away in their arms. "We had nothing left to eat," one survivor later recalled in oral histories, "only water from the pond, and even that tasted of despair." Commas in their gasping breaths, pauses as strength failed and bodies slumped by the roadside. The air carried the stench of decay mingled with the faint, mocking aroma of rice cooking in distant homes of the better off. In urban Calcutta, skeletal migrants flooded in from rural areas, collapsing on pavements too feeble to move, while relief efforts struggled against bureaucracy and wartime priorities. Bodies piled up faster than they could be removed. Some days, hundreds collected from streets, wrapped in whatever cloth remained, carted to mass cremations or shallow graves. Rural Bengal saw entire hamlets emptied. Men abandoned farms to search for work or enlist, leaving women and children to forage for roots, leaves, or snails from canals. Cyclone damage from October 1942 had ruined crops, but the real blow came from halted rice imports after Japan's conquest of Burma, combined with inflation that skyrocketed prices beyond laborers' wages. Hoarding by merchants fearing shortages drove costs higher. Speculation turned rice into a commodity few could afford. People sold land, jewelry, even children into servitude for a few handfuls of grain. In the countryside, fishing communities lost boats, confiscated under denial policies, meant to deny resources to potential invaders, leaving fishermen without livelihood, markets without fish. Urban workers paid fixed wages that bought less each day, watched families waste away, children scavenged garbage heaps, elderly begged door to door. "How can rice be so expensive when the fields are still green?" a desperate father might have asked, dividing a single roti among his starving children under a thatched roof leaking monsoon rain. The famine's cruelty lay in its selectivity. The poor, landless laborers, fishermen, and small farmers suffered most, while stockpiles waited in warehouses or were exported for war needs. Acts of quiet heroism emerged, neighbors sharing meager portions, volunteers distributing gruel in makeshift kitchens, doctors treating the sick without supplies. Yet the scale overwhelmed. Disease spread through crowded, unsanitary conditions, malaria and cholera claiming those already weakened by hunger. Streets of Calcutta became galleries of suffering, with photographers capturing images that shocked the world when finally published. This was no mere crop failure. It was a crisis amplified by wartime disruptions, policy choices, and economic failures that turned abundance into absence for millions. As bodies lined roads and rivers swelled with the drowned who sought escape in water, the Bengal famine stands as a haunting reminder of how conflict's shadow can devour civilians far from any front line, reducing human lives to statistics in a ledger of priorities. The Bengal Famine of 1943 holds immense importance as one of the deadliest civilian catastrophes of World War II, exposing how wartime exigencies, economic policies, and administrative failures could precipitate mass starvation, even when overall food production did not collapse entirely. It disrupted social structures, impoverished millions, and left lasting demographic and health impacts. Survivors faced higher disease risks, and the event fueled post-war debates on colonialism, entitlement failures, and famine prevention. Scholarly work, including Amartya Sen's analysis of entitlements rather than absolute shortages, shifted understanding from natural disasters to human-caused distribution crises. To understand its origins, trace the context in British India during the global conflict. Bengal, a densely populated province around 60 million people, relied heavily on rice as staple, with agriculture supporting subsistence farmers, laborers, and urban workers. Pre-war, rice imports from Burma supplemented local harvests. World War II changed everything. Japan's entry in December 1941 and rapid conquest of Burma by early 1942 cut off those imports. Burma supplied about 15% of Bengal's rice needs. Fears of Japanese invasion along the coast prompted British authorities to implement denial policies, confiscating boats, rice stocks, and transport in coastal areas to prevent resources falling to invaders. This crippled fishing, local trade, and rice movement by water, vital in deltaic Bengal. An October 1942 cyclone devastated the autumn man crop, flooding fields and killing livestock, while forcing farmers to eat seed grain meant for planting. Wartime inflation surged as military spending flooded money into the economy without matching goods. Prices rose sharply while wages for laborers stagnated. Hoarding and speculation by traders worsened access for the poor. Calcutta swelled with Allied troops and war workers, increasing demand. British priorities focused on provisioning forces in Europe and Asia. Rice exports continued in limited ways, and relief imports lagged due to shipping shortages and strategic decisions. Local administration, under a coalition government, faced internal divisions and delayed response. Initial denials of crisis severity hampered action. By mid-1943, rural distress exploded into visible famine. Migrants streamed to cities, bodies appeared on streets. Relief kitchens opened, but too late and insufficiently. The Famine Inquiry Commission later estimated excess deaths around 1.5 million officially, though broader studies push higher. The famine was not caused by drought alone, analyses note, but by failures in entitlement and distribution amid war pressures. Commas in the halting reports, pauses where warnings went unheeded. This backdrop framed a tragedy where policy and circumstance converged to deny millions access to food, turning a manageable shortfall into widespread death and displacement, and highlighting vulnerabilities of colonial economies under global conflict. Early 1943, the dry season gives way to scorching heat in Bengal's villages, where the first signs of crisis harden into something far more deadly. As rice prices climbed through late 1942 and into the new year, rural distress turned acute. Landless laborers, fishermen, and small farmers, those who lived hand-to-mouth on daily wages, found their earnings buying less each week. Inflation, fueled by wartime military spending and disrupted trade, pushed rice costs up fivefold or more in some markets. A day's wage that once purchased several seers of rice now bought barely one. Families began skipping meals, then eating once a day, then subsisting on watery gruel stretched with wild greens or pond water. In the countryside, men left homes to seek work in towns or to enlist, hoping army pay would send money back. Many never returned. Women and children foraged farther each day, gathering snails from canals, picking leaves from roadside trees, digging roots that offered little nourishment. By spring, skeletal figures appeared on village paths, begging at doors where once they had bartered labor. "We sold the last pot for a handful of rice," a mother in mid-Napur later recounted in relief records, and still the children cried through the night. Commas in their weakening voices, pauses as another child grew too quiet. In Calcutta and other cities, the stream of migrants swelled. Entire families arrived on foot or by overcrowded trains, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs. They camped on pavements, in railway stations, under bridges, anywhere shelter could be found. Bodies began appearing each morning, people who had collapsed overnight from starvation or exhaustion. Municipal workers, overwhelmed, collected dozens daily, wrapping them in jute sacks or old cloth, hauling them to cremation grounds or riversides. Estimates later placed street deaths in Calcutta alone in the tens of thousands over months. Disease followed hunger closely: malaria, cholera, smallpox, dysentery, spreading through crowded, unsanitary conditions where clean water and sanitation broke down. In rural Bengal, fishing communities suffered doubly. Boats confiscated under denial policies left them without livelihood. Fish markets emptied as supplies vanished. Farmers ate seed grain meant for the next planting, dooming future harvests. Hoarding and speculation worsened the crisis. Merchants held stocks expecting higher prices, while black market rates soared. Some traders profited. Others faced attacks from desperate crowds. Heroism flickered in small corners. Local zamindars opening granaries to feed villagers, volunteers running gruel kitchens with whatever rice or wheat arrived, doctors treating the sick with dwindling medicines. Yet scale defeated goodwill. Relief efforts lagged, hampered by bureaucracy, transport shortages, and wartime priorities that kept shipping focused on military needs. Twists emerged as official responses shifted. Initial denials of famine severity gave way to admissions, but action remained slow. In summer 1943, the peak arrived. Bodies lined roadsides in districts like Midnapore, 24 Parganas, and Dhaka. Rivers carried the dead downstream. Vultures circled over abandoned hamlets. In Calcutta, photographers captured images of emaciated figures that, when published abroad, shocked distant audiences. Losses mounted relentlessly. Entire families wiped out, villages depopulated, children orphaned and wandering. Technology played no saving role. No airdrops reached the starving. No advanced distribution systems bridged the gap. Basic tools, bullock carts, riverboats were either requisitioned or useless without fuel and labor. By autumn, as monsoon rains returned, the crisis eased slightly. Not from abundance, but from fewer mouths to feed and some relief rice arriving by rail and ship. Government kitchens expanded, distributing gruel and wheat. Prices began to stabilize as imports trickled in. Yet the damage was done. Millions weakened, immune systems shattered, ready to succumb to the next wave of illness. The main story unfolded in this relentless progression, from rising prices and shrinking entitlements, through mass migration and visible starvation, to widespread death and disease, where survival hinged on whatever scraps of community kindness or official aid could be found amid systemic failure. October 1943, the monsoon begins to thin over Bengal, yet the province remains trapped in the famine's deadliest grip, where mortality reaches its horrifying zenith. The climax struck in the final months of 1943. Starvation deaths peaked in November and December, overlapping with the deadly surge of epidemics. In Calcutta, municipal teams collected hundreds of bodies every morning from pavements, railway stations, and alleyways, emaciated figures who had simply collapsed and stopped breathing overnight. Rural districts like Midnapore, 24 Parganas, and Bakarganj reported even grimmer scenes. Entire families found lifeless in their huts, children too weak to cry, elderly left by roadsides as relatives could no longer carry them. Rivers carried corpses downstream. Vultures circled low over abandoned hamlets. The air hung heavy with the smell of decay and the faint, labored breaths of the dying. Disease amplified the terror. Malaria swept through already shattered bodies. Cholera erupted in overcrowded, unsanitary relief camps and polluted ponds. Dysentery and smallpox claimed those clinging to life. This was the moment when the crisis appeared irreversible. Entitlements had collapsed so completely that food stocks existing in warehouses, markets, and distant provinces could not reach the starving millions. The scale overwhelmed every system. Relief kitchens fed only a fraction of those in need. Transport remained disrupted by wartime priorities, and bureaucratic delays allowed the horror to deepen day by day. Yet this darkest phase also marked the beginning of reversal. Field Marshal Lord Wavell, newly appointed viceroy in October 1943, made Bengal his immediate priority. He toured the worst-affected areas personally, walked through Calcutta's streets lined with the dying, entered rural camps, spoke directly with officials and survivors. What he witnessed prompted swift, decisive orders. The British Indian Army was directed to take command of famine relief logistics. Military resources, trucks, trains, river steamers, and organizational discipline were mobilized on a scale civil authorities had not achieved. Army units transported grain from surplus regions like Punjab, Australia, and Canada. Soldiers guarded convoys against looting, repaired damaged roads and bridges, and enforced fairer distribution. Over 1 million tons of food, primarily wheat, supplemented by local rice, reached Bengal between late 1943 and mid-1944. Relief kitchens expanded dramatically, serving millions daily and distributing over 110 million free meals in total. Prices, which had soared to ruinous levels, began to moderate as supplies flooded markets and speculation faced greater scrutiny. The Yaman rice harvest of December 1943, stronger than expected due to favorable rains, provided natural replenishment, filling local stocks and reducing dependence on imports alone. By January 1944, the shift became visible. Daily death rates in Calcutta hospitals fell from hundreds to dozens. Streets that had become open morgues slowly cleared as migrants returned to villages with small rations. Children who had survived the peak months started regaining strength. Swollen bellies receded. Color returned to faces. Mothers could once again nurse infants. Families replanted fields with whatever seed remained. Hospitals, though still overwhelmed, treated survivors for lingering malnutrition and disease with whatever quinine, vitamins, and medicines could be spared. The famine officially began to wind down by mid-1944, though excess mortality from weakened health continued into 1945. The resolution carried no sense of triumph, only the gradual, painful return of ordinary life. Markets restocked gradually. Families shared meals without the constant fear of tomorrow's emptiness. Children played again without hunger pangs. The deepest lesson was stark. The Bengal famine was man-made, rooted not in absolute food shortage, but in entitlement failure. Inflation eroding purchasing power for the poor. Burma rice imports cut off after Japanese occupation. Denial policies disrupting local trade and fishing. Hoarding and speculation inflating prices. And delayed administrative response preventing timely relief. Preventable deaths, scholarly estimates ranging from 1.5 million to over 3 million, highlighted how wartime priorities and indirect disruptions could devastate civilian lives far from any battlefield. The event spurred reforms in food security monitoring, early warning systems, and equitable distribution during crises. The end arrived not with fanfare, but in quiet, everyday signs. A full bowl of rice, a child's laughter free of desperation, a province slowly healing from scarcity shaped by distant global war. I've just said what's recorded in history. You should find out the real truth yourself. We have written the sources from which we got this story in the description of this video. And we have always been and will be supporters of the oppressed, regardless of their color, race, or country. This world and its creator are also with the oppressed. If this story moved you, like the video, comment your thoughts below. What surprises you most about the Bengal Famine of 1943? Subscribe for more forgotten WW2 stories that history often overlooks. See you in the next WW2 story.